You're watching Mirror Readings. I'm Molly, and today we're talking about gene key number 6. Gene key number 6 has the shadow of conflict, the gift of diplomacy, and the city of peace. Conflict is what occurs when two or more people in an interaction identify with their emotional states and start defending those states. Conflict is also what underlies the whole concept of hierarchy. So we live in the third density in the plane of duality, light, dark, good, bad, male, female. But we have to watch out in this shadow of conflict, which is really baked in at the societal level and into the dimension that we live in, for when we make someone else an authority over us, or when we start acting like an authority over others. Hierarchy at a conscious or subconscious level is what causes us to become tribal and become suspicious of any individuals or groups who are different than us. And in order for the whole world to transcend this shadow of conflict, there has to literally be a revolution at the individual level that spreads out into the collective of finding diplomacy within ourselves. We have to be able to watch these egoic flare-ups of these emotional states and learn how to talk to ourselves like diplomats. Only then can we start talking to other people with that gift of diplomacy. At both the individual and collective level, this shadow of conflict makes us inauthentic people pleasers, or in the reactive state, we have absolutely no control over our emotions, and our nervous system just gets hijacked by whatever we're feeling and we're off to the races. That state of having an emotionally hijacked nervous system requires us to create some kind of pause. By the way, any pause will do. Anything that stops the ego train of wanting to defend ourselves, whether it plays out in thoughts, words, deeds, whatever. Any pause helps. This gift allows us to adjust our behavior to be able to create harmonious exchanges with others, but it all starts with the pause. If even just one person in the interaction is able to pause, get out of the blame game, and access that gift of diplomacy within themselves, all of a sudden the gift of diplomacy becomes available to anyone involved in the interaction. What fuels the gift of diplomacy is tactful honesty. So tactful honesty is being honest without emotional charge behind it. And it's an absolutely essential skill for any diplomat, starting with how we speak to ourselves. As we become more conscious of our emotional patterns, we have more access to tactful diplomacy because the amount of time our nervous system gets hijacked when we experience a big wave of emotion becomes increasingly shortened over time. Therefore, tactful honesty it's available to us more readily. Accessing tactful honesty by way of diplomacy requires us to drop our defenses. If we're so busy defending our positions, which is a total ego trip, we block connection. We literally can't be in love if we're stuck in our defenses because there's no love that can get through when the connection is totally dominated by defensiveness. So the city of peace tells us that the ultimate defense is to be completely empty of defenses. Peace is the city that underlies all of the other cities. It's a balance of opposites, which is a reconciliation of duality. Yes, duality is a feature of living in this dimension, but by pointing our consciousness beyond the cycle of human drama, we can start to access inner peace, which is ultimately going to radiate out to world peace. Yes, world peace is possible in our lifetime. The Gene Keys actually refers to it as a myth, but only because the idea is that once we actually achieve that inner state of peace and it starts to radiate out at the global scale, we're no longer going to be human. We will have become something else. We will have accessed Christ consciousness at scale. And in many ways, that's like the end of the world, right? The apocalypse is actually not the end of everything. It's the revelation of knowledge that brings about Christ consciousness. All right, I know I really just went in there, but these cities are completely beyond our human comprehension. And reading the explanations of them in the Big Gene Key book is like, it honestly feels like words are constantly failing these states of being. We've all glimpsed moments of inner peace, hopefully. And as we learn to become diplomats in how we talk to ourselves, we stop projecting our shadows of conflict and our own internal conflicts out onto the world. We can learn to regulate our nervous system so that our bodies naturally become agents of peace. And even though words totally fail at the Siddhic state, these cities are still worth contemplating, particularly because they orient our frequency to an expanded version of what's possible. And what I've actually found in doing readings is that the cities are very useful for people who've already stabilized in their gifts, and also for people who are really locked in shadow patterns. It's almost like when we're stuck in a shadow pattern, it seems so impossible to believe that the gift is just the other side of the coin, that it's just a shift in our attitude. But orienting towards the city, contemplating them, meditating on them, just even looking at the words, no matter how clunky they are, it expands our state of being by expanding our consciousness of what's possible. And that's why the cities are low-key, like the most important feature of the gene keys, even though when it comes to practical application, I find myself using them the least. Paradox, baby. We're nowhere near the truth of the human experience until we get to paradox. But when we get there, pay attention, because that's where our evolution is happening as we reconcile opposites and balance duality within ourselves. So that's it for Gene Key 6. I leave you with paradox, the great mystery and answer to the human experience. Thanks for being here. I'm Molly. If you'd like to get a reading with me, visit me, mirrorreadings.com, or email me, mirrorreadings@gmail.com to set up an appointment. And if you subscribe to this channel, you can get 15% off. Thank you, and see you next time.